A violent storm tears through the alien world of Duran 4, but Lieutenant Rylan Eris isn't afraid of the weather. He's about to uncover a secret buried beneath the planet's surface. A creature, no larger than his palm, glowing with a mysterious energy. What starts as a simple rescue mission soon spirals into something far more dangerous. This creature, now growing into a fierce predator, isn't just any alien. It's a sacred guardian tied to a royal bloodline on a distant planet. And as Rylan's bond with the creature deepens, he begins to experience visions of a civilization that vanished centuries ago. But when an alien princess arrives demanding the creature's return, Rylan must choose: protect the bond he's formed, or risk everything to save the galaxy. What will happen when the power of the Guardian awakens? The fate of two worlds lies in his hands. Stay tuned. If you're new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Now let's move to this wonderful story. The storm on Duran 4 raged violently, its howling winds battering against the reinforced walls of the research outpost. Lieutenant Rylan Eris stood at the viewport, watching the chaos unfold. The sky above was a deep violet, alive with streaks of lightning that split the air and illuminated the alien landscape. The storm had been growing for hours, and something about it felt different, something beyond the usual violent weather patterns. The strange vegetation that covered the valley below trembled with each thunderous crack, as if the planet itself was alive and reacting to the storm's fury. For the past 3 months, Rylan and his team had been cataloging the flora and fauna of this unknown world for Earth's Interstellar Exploration Initiative. The work was tedious but necessary, mapping planets for future colonization efforts and potential resource extraction. But tonight, something felt off. Rylan couldn't shake the feeling that the planet had more secrets than they had uncovered. His thoughts were interrupted by a voice crackling through the comm system. "Sir, you need to see this," called Specialist Kira Luth, her voice tense and urgent. "Seismic readings are off the charts in Sector 7. Rylan frowned, turning away from the viewport. "Natural or otherwise?" he asked, his voice steady despite the unease building in his chest. "Unknown," Kira replied. "But it's causing a massive ground collapse about 2 clicks north. You need to see it." Without hesitation, Rylan grabbed his environmental suit, pulling it on with practiced efficiency. "Prep the rover. We're heading out in this storm," he ordered. "But sir, protocol states," Kira began, her voice edged with concern. "I'm well aware of protocol, Specialist." Rylan cut her off, sealing his helmet with a snap. "Whatever is happening won't wait for the weather to clear." 20 minutes later, the rover bounced across the alien terrain, its reinforced chassis handling the rough ground with ease. The storm had worsened, sheets of acidic rain pounding against the vehicle's protective shell, the air thick with the smell of ozone and something unfamiliar. Rylan peered through the windshield, his eyes scanning the landscape for any signs of the massive collapse Kira had mentioned. Suddenly, she pointed toward the horizon. "There, sir." Her voice was tight, with awe. Ahead of them, a massive sinkhole had opened in the ground at least 50 meters across. The rover's headlights illuminated the dark abyss, revealing something shimmering beneath the surface. "Some kind of structure?" Rylan muttered to himself, bringing the vehicle to a halt at a safe distance. The glow from below the surface was faint, but unmistakable. Ancient tech, maybe? They approached cautiously on foot, tethered to the rover by their lines. The sinkhole's edge was treacherous, the ground still shifting beneath their boots. As they neared the hole, Rylan's heart rate quickened. Within the blackness of the hole, they could just make out the shape of a buried chamber. Its walls were lined with a material that resembled polished obsidian, but with a strange, otherworldly glow emanating from within. "Holy shit," Kira whispered, her breath fogging her visor as she stared at the structure. "This is way beyond anything we've encountered before." The further they descended into the chamber, the more Rylan felt the weight of what they had found. This was no ordinary structure, no simple relic from a long-lost civilization. Whatever it was important, and the planet had hidden it beneath its surface for a reason. As they moved deeper into the chamber, Rylan's eyes narrowed. Something small was moving in the corner of his vision. He froze, staring at the creature. No larger than his palm, it was covered in bright blue fur that shimmered in the dim light. Its piercing ice-blue eyes glowed faintly in the darkness, and despite its small size, there was an unmistakable intelligence in its gaze. It cowered in the corner, clearly injured, a trail of glowing blue fluid leaking from a wound on its flank. "What the hell is that?" Kira asked, reaching for her scanner. Rylan instinctively stepped forward, his hand reaching for the creature. Before he could respond, the ground shook violently, sending rocks tumbling down around them. "We need to go now," Rylan shouted, his voice urgent. They turned to leave, but Rylan found himself staring at the small creature again. Something in its intelligent eyes held him transfixed. Without thinking, he scooped it up and tucked it into a specimen pouch on his suit. His heart raced as he glanced up at Kira, who looked at him with confusion. "Are you sure about this, sir?" she asked, her voice uncertain. "We're not leaving it behind," Rylan replied, his voice firm. "It's not just any creature. There's something special about it." They barely made it back to the rover before the entire structure collapsed behind them. The shockwave from the explosion rocked the vehicle, nearly toppling it over. Rylan's grip tightened on the steering wheel as he sped back toward the outpost, his mind racing with questions. In the back of his suit, the small creature squirmed. Against his chest, its tiny heartbeat racing in sync with his own. Rylan couldn't explain why, but he felt a strange, protective instinct for it. As they neared the outpost, he glanced down at the pouch where the creature rested. It had already begun to settle, its eyes closed in exhaustion. Once back at the base, the science team was eager to examine the new specimen. But Rylan, for reasons he couldn't explain, felt a strange reluctance to let anyone else handle it. "It needs medical attention first," he insisted, taking the creature to his quarters rather than to the lab. In the quiet of his quarters, Rylan carefully cleaned the wound with antiseptic and offered it some water and small protein rations. To his surprise, it cautiously accepted the food, its ice-blue eyes watching him with something that could almost be described as trust. "What are you?" Rylan whispered as he sat back, watching the creature curl up on his pillow, its fur shimmering slightly in the dim light. "And why do I feel like I was meant to find you?" That night, as Rylan drifted off to sleep, the creature crawled closer, pressing itself against his neck. In his dreams, he saw flashes of a vast civilization, green-skinned humanoids with silver hair and massive beasts with blue fur standing guard over ornate temples. When Rylan woke, the creature was staring at him with those impossibly intelligent eyes, and he knew, without a doubt, that his life had just changed forever. As the days passed, Rylan's connection with the creature, which he had named Zorath, deepened in ways that he couldn't fully comprehend. It was no longer just a wild animal he had found. It was something far more significant, a living being with intelligence, emotions, and a presence that seemed to grow stronger with each passing day. The research outpost on Dirayan Ovir had been buzzing with excitement since Zorath's discovery, but Rylan had kept it to himself. The scientists were eager to examine the creature, but Rylan felt a strong sense of protectiveness over it, as though it were his responsibility to keep it safe. Zorath's growth was nothing short of extraordinary. What had once fit comfortably in the palm of Rylan's hand now stood at his knee, its body rippling with muscle. Its blue fur, which had shimmered faintly when it was small, now glowed with an intense vibrancy, making it look almost ethereal. Its eyes, though still the same ice blue, seemed to hold more depth, as though they could see into Rylan's soul. At night it would curl up beside him, its warmth radiating through his suit, as though it too sought comfort in the bond that was forming between them. One evening, as Rylan recorded another entry in his personal log, he noted that Zorath had gained another 2 kilos since the previous week. The creature's body had grown in size, but its appearance had changed as well. The predatory features were becoming more pronounced, its claws now extended like daggers, its fangs sharper. Yet despite the fierce look, there was no aggression in its actions. It was gentle, almost docile when it interacted with Rylan and the other crew members. "Another 2 kilos since last week," Rylan muttered to himself as he scribbled the measurement into his log. He glanced over at Zorath, who was sitting on the floor, watching him intently. The creature tilted its head slightly, its eyes unblinking. Rylan sighed, a mix of awe and unease bubbling within him. "What are you?" he whispered, as though the creature might answer. But Zorath only stared back, its expression unreadable. Despite its rapid growth, the creature showed no signs of aggression. It was as if it had formed some sort of connection with Rylan, a bond that transcended anything he could explain. It followed him around the outpost like a loyal companion, always watching with those knowing eyes, always aware of his every move. But that connection was starting to draw unwanted attention. It was late one afternoon when Captain Duncan Harrow, the commander of the outpost, called Rylan into his office. The captain's face was tense, his weathered features set in a grim expression as he turned the screen of his terminal toward Rylan. "Explain this," Harrow said, his voice sharp. The screen displayed a set of complex energy readings, pulsing, patterns that didn't match any of the data they had on file. The readings were coming from Zorath's quarters, and they were unlike anything in their database. Rylan felt his stomach tighten. "I can't explain it, sir," he admitted, his voice quieter than usual. "But I can assure you Zorath isn't dangerous, he's not." "You've grown attached to this thing, haven't you?" Harrow interrupted, raising an eyebrow. Rylan hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, sir. But there's more to it than just attachment. I feel like we share something, like there's a bond between us that I can't explain." "You're saying that creature is telepathic?" Harrow's voice was incredulous. Rylan paused, his eyes narrowing. "I don't know, but I've been having dreams, visions really, of another world, another civilization, and I think they're coming from Zorath." The captain didn't respond immediately. He simply stared at Rylan, a mixture of skepticism and concern in his eyes. Finally, after a long pause, Harrow spoke again. "Earth Command wants the creature transferred to the research facility on Europa. The transport arrives in 3 days. Rylan's chest tightened. "Sir, I don't think separating Zorath from me is wise," he said, his voice firm. "There's something about him, something that feels important. I don't think we fully understand what's happening between us." Harrow's expression hardened. "A connection, you say? Elaborate." Rylan took a deep breath. "I've been having these dreams, these flashes of a civilization that doesn't belong to our galaxy. Green-skinned humanoids with silver hair, massive blue-furred beasts standing guard over ancient temples. It's like Zorath is showing me something I'm meant to understand." The captain leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled together. "You're suggesting the creature has some sort of connection to these beings you've been dreaming about? And you're telling me that this thing is somehow tied to a whole civilization?" Rylan nodded, feeling the weight of his words. "Yes, sir. I don't know how or why, but there's more to Zorath than just being an alien creature. I think he's trying to communicate with me, trying to tell me something important." Before the captain could respond, the intercom buzzed to life. "Sir, we have a situation," called Communications Officer Michelle Preston. "An unidentified vessel has entered orbit, non-terrestrial design, and is heading straight for us." Rylan's heart skipped a beat. "What kind of ship?" "We don't know yet, sir," Preston replied, her voice tense. "But it's unlike anything we've ever seen. It's coming in on an intercept course." The captain's eyes met Rylan's. "Looks like we'll have more pressing matters to deal with," he muttered, standing up from his chair. "Get to the command center now." As Rylan followed the captain down the narrow corridors of the outpost, he felt a strange chill creep up his spine. The thoughts of Zorath's connection to another world, to another civilization, seemed to swirl in his mind. And now, an unidentified vessel was headed straight for them. Was it a coincidence? Or was it something more? They arrived at the command center, where the screens displayed the sleek, iridescent ship, its curves flowing like liquid metal. It was unlike anything Rylan had ever seen, and a sense of foreboding settled over him. "They're hailing us," reported Preston, her voice strained. "On screen now." The view screen flickered to life. revealing a humanoid figure with smooth green skin, long silver hair, and elegant pointed ears. The alien's face was beautiful, but there was an undeniable air of authority about her. She wore ceremonial armor of golden bronze, accentuating her regal form. "I am Princess Ferrara of the Vidian Collective," the alien said, her voice melodic but commanding. "You have something that belongs to us." Ryland's heart skipped a beat. It was happening. The dreams, the visions, the connection to Zorath. It was all leading to this moment. The princess's eyes locked with his, and for the first time he understood that his life, and Zorath's fate, had just become intertwined with something far larger than anything he could have imagined. The air in the command center was thick with tension as Ryland stared at the alien princess on the screen. Her regal presence radiated authority, and the words she spoke sent a ripple of unease through him. He had suspected that Zorath was no ordinary creature, but now the reality of it, the sheer significance of what he had found, was starting to sink in. "I am Princess Ferrara of the Vidian Collective," she repeated, her voice firm, yet strangely melodic. "You have something that belongs to us. It is a sacred guardian, stolen from our temple during its awakening ceremony." Ryland's heart skipped a beat. "Guardian?" he whispered under his breath as if testing the word. He had always known that Zorath was special. But a guardian? It was more than he had ever imagined. "The creature you call Zorath is a guardian. Cub bonded to our royal bloodline," Princess Ferrara continued, her eyes intense as she spoke. "It was meant to be raised in our sacred temple, not by an outsider. You've been fostering a guardian, and in doing so, you've disrupted centuries of tradition." Ryland's mind raced. A guardian. He had assumed Zorath was a strange alien creature, not something that could change the course of an entire civilization. But here was an alien princess, claiming that Zorath was part of a tradition that spanned generations, one tied to her royal lineage. This was not just about the creature anymore. It was about history, about power, and about forces far beyond his understanding. "I found Zorath injured," Ryland replied, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "He wasn't stolen. He was hurt, and I brought him back to safety. I've been caring for him, and I'm not going to let anyone take him from me." Princess Ferrara's gaze softened, but her voice remained unwavering. "You misunderstand. It is not a matter of theft, Lieutenant. It is a matter of bond and duty. Guardians are not simply pets or animals. They are sacred protectors of our people, bound by ancient rituals and traditions. Zorath was chosen by our ancestors, bound to our bloodline. He is a guardian, and it is his purpose to protect our people." Ryland felt a surge of confusion and frustration. He had grown so close to Zorath, and the thought of losing him, of being separated from the creature that had somehow become part of him, was unbearable. He knew that Zorath had grown, changed, and become something more than just an animal. There was something deeper, something more profound between them, something that couldn't be explained by bloodlines or ancient ceremonies. "And what does that mean for me?" Ryland asked, his voice tinged with a mix of defiance and uncertainty. "Does that mean that I'm just supposed to hand him over because of some old tradition? I've spent months with him. I know him, and he knows me. He's not just a guardian, he's my companion." Princess Ferrara's eyes narrowed, and for the first time Ryland saw a flicker of something else in her gaze, something almost akin to understanding. "You speak of a bond. I see that now. You have formed a connection with the Guardian, Lieutenant, but you do not understand what it truly means. A Guardian cannot remain with an outsider. If the bond is not completed correctly, the Guardian will grow unstable. Their power will become chaotic, and it could destroy everything around them." Ryland's chest tightened at her words. He had sensed Zorath's power growing, felt the energy swirling around them, but hearing her say it out loud made it all the more real. Zorath was no ordinary creature. He was a force, a protector bound by forces far greater than Ryland could comprehend. "What do you mean by unstable?" Ryland asked, his voice low, his heart racing. What will happen to him if the bond isn't completed? Princess Ferrara's face darkened. When a guardian reaches full maturity without proper bonding, its power becomes uncontrollable. It is an ancient law, and we have seen it before. Guardians who grow too powerful without guidance become dangerous, not only to those around them, but to themselves as well. They lose their sense of control. Their power spirals out of control and they can no longer be contained. It is a fate that no guardian should suffer. Rylan swallowed hard. The thought of Zorath, his companion, his friend, becoming a danger, to himself, to others, was almost too much to bear. He looked down at the creature who was lying at his feet, its ice-blue eyes glowing faintly in the dim light of the command center. It was hard to imagine that this gentle, intelligent being could become a threat. "What happens if I refuse to let you take him?" Rylan asked, his voice trembling with a mix of fear and resolve. Princess Ferrara's expression softened, but there was a sadness in her eyes. "You do not understand, Lieutenant. It is not a choice. If the bond is not completed, Zorath's power will grow unchecked, and he will become a danger, not just to you, but to everyone around him. We are offering you a chance to help him, to ensure that he is able to fulfill his purpose as a guardian, but you must come with us, to Vidya." Rylan felt a knot form in his stomach. He had no choice but to go with her. The stakes were too high. If what she said was true, Zorath was in danger that Rylan could not ignore. But he couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just about Zorath. It was about something much larger, something that could change everything. "I'll go," Rylan said finally, his voice steady despite the weight of his decision. "But I need assurances. I need to know that Zorath will be safe. I need to understand what's happening between us." Princess Ferrara nodded, her expression softening. "You will understand. When you come to Vidya, everything will be made clear." As she ended the transmission, Rylan felt the full weight of what lay ahead. He was about to step into a world unlike any he had ever known, one that was as ancient and mysterious as the creature he had come to care for. Zorath, his protector, his companion, had a purpose, one that would change not only his life, but the fate of an entire civilization. And Rylan somehow was destined to be part of it. The transport vessel descended slowly through the iridescent clouds of Vidya, the planet's twin moons casting a pale glow over the landscape below. As the ship passed through the atmosphere, Rylan looked out the viewport, his breath caught in his chest. Vidya was nothing like any planet he had seen before. The planet was lush, covered in dense jungles with towering spires of crystalline rock that seemed to rise naturally from the ground. The entire planet felt alive, its pulse beating in rhythm with the strange energy that emanated from it. "Welcome to Vidya." Princess Ferrara's voice broke through Rylan's reverie. She stood beside him at the viewport, her silver hair shimmering in the changing light. "Few humans have ever seen our home world. Consider yourself fortunate." Rylan nodded, his mind racing with questions. He had never imagined that his journey, which had started with a simple exploration mission on Duran IV, would lead him to a planet as mysterious and ancient as this one. As the transport landed on a platform nestled between two mountains, Rylan could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. When the doors to the transport opened, a cool breeze swept through, carrying with it the rich, earthy scent of the jungle. A delegation of Vidian officials stood waiting for them, their expressions unreadable. They wore elaborate ceremonial armor, their faces a mix of curiosity, skepticism, and barely concealed hostility. Rylan's hand instinctively went to the pouch where Zorath rested. He could feel the creature stirring as though it knew it was about to face something that was as much a part of its history as it was of its present. As Rylan stepped out of the transport, he was struck by the overwhelming beauty of the place. Massive trees, their trunks thick and covered in bioluminescent fungi, towered over them. The air was thick with the sounds of alien creatures calling out in the distance, their voices echoing across the vast, untamed wilderness. The ground was soft beneath his boots, a mix of moss and grass that seemed to pulse with energy. "Follow me," Princess Ferrara said, her tone commanding but not unkind. "We will take you to the Temple of Guardians." As they made their way through the dense jungle, Rylan couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. This planet, so different from Earth, seemed to hold secrets that no one outside of Vidian history could possibly understand. But he was about to learn those secrets firsthand. Ferrara walked beside him, her stride graceful, her posture regal. There was something about her presence that commanded respect, even without saying a word. "You've brought a human to our sacred ground, Ferrara," one of the officials muttered under his breath. Rylan caught the words, but he kept his eyes forward, pretending not to notice. It was clear that not everyone in the delegation was pleased with his presence, and Rylan couldn't blame them. To them, he was an outsider, a foreigner who had no place in their ancient traditions. But to him, Zorath was not just a creature to be handed over to the royalty of Vidia. He was a companion, a being with whom he shared a deep, unspoken connection. Finally, after what felt like hours, they arrived at the Temple of Guardians. It was a massive structure carved from the living rock of the planet itself. The walls were adorned with intricate carvings depicting guardians large and powerful, standing protectively around their people. Rylan felt a shiver run down his spine as he approached the entrance. The air seemed heavier here, charged with ancient energy. It was clear that this was a place of great significance. As they entered the temple, the atmosphere became even more intense. The walls glowed with an ethereal light, and the air smelled faintly of incense. Rylan's eyes darted around, taking in the surroundings. There were statues of guardians, their fierce expressions frozen in stone. And at the far end of the temple stood a massive altar, its surface carved with symbols that Rylan couldn't even begin to understand. He felt the presence of something ancient and powerful in this place, a force that had been here long before he had arrived, and one that would continue long after he was gone. "This is where the bonding ritual will take place," Princess Ferrara said, her voice echoing in the vast chamber. "The guardian must bond with its rightful mate, and the power that comes from this union will stabilize its energy. Without it, the guardian will become unstable. It is the way of our people." Rylan's heart pounded in his chest as he looked down at Zorath, who was now standing beside him. The creature had grown significantly since they had first met, its massive form now nearly as large as a horse. Its blue fur rippled with muscle, and its eyes, still the same ice blue, held a look of wisdom that seemed far beyond its years. Zorath's presence was overwhelming, but Rylan felt a sense of calm in his chest. This was his companion. This was the creature he had been destined to find, to care for, to bond with. The officials and priests who had gathered in the temple began to chant in a language Rylan couldn't understand, their voices rising and falling in a rhythmic pattern. Ferrara stood beside him, her hand resting lightly on his arm. He could feel the energy in the room building, the air thick with anticipation. "You are ready," Ferrara said quietly, her gaze locked on his. "This is not just about the creature. It is about you. About us. About breaking the chains of tradition and finding a bond that transcends our people's history." Rylan's breath caught in his throat. He had come to Vidia thinking he was just here to return a creature. But now, standing in this ancient temple, he realized that he was about to change the fate of an entire civilization. And not just with Zorath, but with Princess Ferrara as well. "Do you understand what this means, Rylan?" Ferrara asked, her voice soft but intense. "This is not just about the Guardian. It is about you and me. Our bond is as powerful as any Guardian's, and it will shape the future of Vidia." Rylan looked at her, feeling the weight of her words. He had never imagined that his journey would lead him here, to this moment of profound connection. But in that instant he understood. This was not just about a creature or a planet. It was about a future that could be built on trust, unity, and shared strength. Without another word, Ferrara stepped forward, placing her hand on the altar. Rylan followed her lead, placing his hand beside hers. As their hands touched, the energy in the room surged, a wave of power that resonated through their bodies, connecting them in ways that words could not explain. Zorath, standing behind them, let out a low, rumbling growl, his body glowing with a fierce blue light. The bonding had begun. As the ritual reached its peak, Rylan felt a surge of emotions, hope, fear, love, and determination, all flooding him at once. It was overwhelming, but it was also the most natural thing he had ever experienced. In that moment, he knew that his life had been leading him to this exact point. This was his purpose. The light in the temple intensified, swirling around them in a vortex of energy. Rylan felt the power of the bond coursing through him, binding him not only to Zorath but also to Ferrara. Together, they were unstoppable, and together they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. As the ritual ended, the energy slowly faded, leaving a profound silence in its wake. Rylan looked at Ferrara, her emerald eyes shining with a new light, one that reflected not just the power of their bond, but also the promise of a future that neither of them had ever imagined. "It is done," Ferrara whispered, her voice filled with awe and wonder. Rylan nodded, a sense of peace settling over him. Yes, it is done. But as they stood in the aftermath of the ritual, a new sense of purpose filled the air. They had bonded, and together they would face whatever came next.